Friends, have you ever wondered how history chooses its winners? It's not always the best, the smartest, or the most advanced. Sometimes it's simply the one who was in the right place at the right time. And the one who wasn't gets forgotten. Today, I want to tell you a story about a ghost. A ghost of a weapon that could have changed everything for the Red Army officer in the Second World War. A masterpiece of engineering that was born at the worst possible moment and was sacrificed on the altar of industrial necessity. This is the story of the Voevodin pistol, the gun that should have won. If stories of forgotten technology, tragic what-ifs, and the brutal logic of war intrigue you, do me a favor right now. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. This isn't just a dry historical footnote. This is a detective story, a tragedy, and a technical saga rolled into one. And I want to hear your verdict at the end. Could things have been different? Let's find out together. The cracks in the icon. Why the TT was no longer enough. Imagine the scene, the late 1930s. The Soviet Union is a colossus feverishly building its future. The smell of a great war already thick in the air. The Red Army has its symbol, its trusted sidearm. The Tula Tokarev, the TT, adopted in the year 1933. It was simple, powerful, firing the formidable 7.62 by 25 mm cartridge. What more could one want? But the officers, the men who held it in their hands on the training grounds, in border skirmishes, began to whisper. That whisper grew into a clear, unsettling murmur of discontent. And this discontent had names, technical names. Flaw number 1, a safety that wasn't really there. The TT lacked a proper frame-mounted manual safety. It had only a half-cock notch on the hammer. An experienced soldier could manage it, but in the chaos of combat, in muddy trenches, if dropped, the weapon could discharge. This wasn't a theoretical fear. These were stories passed from soldier to soldier, stories not printed in newspapers. Flaw number 2, 8 rounds. Just 8. In the magazine. While the world was already fielding Lugers and Brownings with magazines holding 13, 15, even 20 rounds. 8 shots, that's a few seconds of combat. Then comes a reload. A pause that in close-quarters fighting could be the last pause of an officer's life. But there was a deeper doctrinal flaw. The very idea of a pistol's role was changing. The era of the Revolution and Civil War saw the pistol as the commander's last argument in a trench, a weapon of staff officers' self-defense. By the late 30s, it was clear the next war would be mobile, fluid. An officer was not just a manager with a map. He was at the front in a tank on an artillery piece, leading an assault. He didn't just need to have a pistol. He needed a weapon that could provide fire superiority at a critical moment. A weapon to control space, not just to fight back. The pistol was shedding its status as a ceremonial item. It had to become a compact yet formidable tool for survival and victory. This shift in thinking was paid for in blood. Kokin Gol 1939. Fierce, mobile battles against the Japanese Guandong Army. Then, immediately after, the winter of 1939-40, the Winter War against Finland. Storming the Mannerheim Line with an 8-round TT? It was a challenge demanding an urgent answer. And the Red Army sought that answer. A new competition was announced. Not just for a pistol, but for an enhanced service pistol, or even an officer's submachine gun. The requirements were strict. Increased reliability, higher magazine capacity, a proper safety, superior accuracy, and rate of fire. The arena was filled with famous designers. Korovin, Rakov, Tokarev himself defending his brainchild. But among them was one man whose project didn't just meet the requirements. It reimagined and surpassed them. His name was Pavel Voevodin. And here, the story takes its first dramatic turn. Who was this man who dared to challenge Tokarev, the patriarch of Soviet small arms?
Pavel Voevodin.
The genius from the shadows. We don't know much about Voevodin. He wasn't a public figure like Tokarev or Degtyaryov. He was an engineer, a technician to his core. He worked at the Tula arms plant. His approach wasn't how to improve the TT, but what should the ideal pistol for the new war be? He looked forward at global trends, and he saw what others either missed or dismissed as superfluous. He kept the same 7.62 by 25 cartridge, a logical choice for logistics, avoiding the need to retool millions of rounds of ammunition production. But from there, the magic began. The first and most striking feature, an 18-round magazine. 18. More than double the TT's capacity. This wasn't just a bigger magazine. It was a new philosophy of combat. With such a reserve, an officer could sustain a prolonged firefight, cover a retreat, clear a room without feeling vulnerable after the first few shots. The technical requirements, by the way, even mentioned a 20-round version. Can you imagine? Essentially, a compact submachine gun in a holster. Second, the locking system. The TT used a Browning-style tilting barrel, proven, but not ideal for a high rate of accurate fire. Voevodin employed a swinging locking piece, a linch or link. This was genius. A special part would firmly lock the barrel to the slide at the moment of firing, then pivot to unlock it. This resulted in an incredibly soft recoil impulse. The muzzle barely jumped. What does that mean in practice? It means the second and third shots in a rapid string hit almost the same point as the first. It improved controllability and practical accuracy. This system would later, after the war, become a hallmark of the Swiss SIG P210 and the Italian Beretta 92. Voevodin was decades ahead of his time. Third, a real frame-mounted safety. Convenient, reliable, operable with the thumb of the shooting hand. The weapon became safe to handle. Fourth, ergonomics. The Voevodin's grip had a more steeply raked, anatomical angle. It mirrored the angle of the legendary Browning High Power, considered one of the world's most comfortable pistols. This was no small detail. A comfortable grip means a faster, more accurate first shot. In the USSR, this was often an afterthought, with technological simplicity prized over shooter comfort. Voevodin thought about the man holding his creation, sweating and bleeding. Fifth, durability. The design was built for war from the ground up. Tolerances were generous, the ejector spring was robust, the mechanism was protected from grime. This pistol was meant to work in snow, desert sand, and trench mud. The result? Not just a pistol. It was a masterpiece of engineering. A weapon whose firepower at close range approached that of early submachine guns, like the PPD, while remaining a compact sidearm. Imagine a tanker bailing out of a disabled T-34. In his hand is not a puny 8-shot TT, but a Voevodin with 18 rounds, capable of holding off enemy infantry. Or a company commander in urban combat. It changed the tactical equation. The trials. A triumph everyone saw. Competitive trials began in late 1940. These weren't just target shoots. They were harsh, almost sadistic ordeals. Weapons were frozen, buried in sand and cement dust, dropped onto concrete, subjected to dusty route marches. And the Voevodin pistol passed them all. The cold numbers speak louder than any praise. Accuracy at 25 meters, 60 to 70 millimeters. That's match-grade precision. For comparison, the TT grouped at 90 to 110 millimeters. The German Luger was around 70 to 80. The Voevodin shot bullseyes. Literally. Reliability. After all the abuse, it had practically zero stoppages. The Commission's report stated it most fully satisfies the tactical and technical requirements. The highest praise. Rate of fire. Thanks to the soft recoil and comfortable grip, a trained shooter could deliver 25 to 30 aimed shots per minute. The TT managed 10 to 12. A 2.5-fold difference. It was compared to the world's best. The Luger P08, the Mauser C96, the state-of-the-art Belgian Browning High Power. The Voevodin didn't just hold its own. It surpassed them in key areas. Magazine capacity, practical rate of fire, and safety. It seemed over. The winner was clear. The country was poised to receive a weapon that could save thousands of officers' lives in the coming war. The Commission recommended the Voevodin for adoption. Spring, 1941. Just weeks before that fateful June. The iron logic of war. Why genius lost to the assembly line. Here we reach the most dramatic point of our story. The point where technical superiority collided with the grim reality of economics and politics. Put yourself in the shoes of the People's Commissariat of Armaments leadership in April-May 1941. On your desk are two options. Option Voevodin. a fantastically advanced weapon, but its production required 58 complex milling operations, countless parts with tight tolerances. It needed high-quality steel. It required completely retooling production lines at Tula and Izhevsk. This would take months, if not a year. And during that time, current TT production would halt. Assembly lines would stop. Tens of thousands of pistols would not be made. Option TT. A weapon with flaws, but it was already here. The assembly lines were humming. They couldn't be stopped for a single day. The technology was perfected. It could be stamped out by the thousands, tens of thousands per month. It was simple, cheap, and available. What do you choose? Feeling the breath of a colossal, unprecedented war on your neck. The choice, alas, was predetermined. The logic of war is the logic of quantity, available here and now. You cannot go into battle empty-handed waiting for a miracle. You must arm millions. And then June 1941 struck. All decisions were postponed. All resources were thrown into scaling up production of existing weapons. Mosin rifles, PPSH submachine guns, those same TTs, tanks, cannons. Promising developments were forgotten. But Voevodin did not give up. In 1942, at the height of the war, a small pre-production batch of his pistols was manufactured at the Izhevsk plant. And here lies the legend. One of these pistols, meticulously polished, beautifully finished, was sent as a gift to Stalin personally, with a dedicatory inscription. A last, desperate attempt to reach the very top. Look, Comrade Stalin, at what we can make. This can help our commanders. What was Stalin's reply? Nothing. The pistol went into an archive or perhaps into the leader's personal collection. History is silent. But the fact remains. The order for mass production never came. Why? The reasons were ironclad. Technological complexity. The war was consuming the best engineers, machine tools, and materials. Producing the complex Voevodin under conditions of factory evacuations to the Urals was an unaffordable luxury. Cost. The unit cost of a Voevodin was multiples higher than that of a TT. Conservatism. The army was already fighting with the TT. Soldiers and officers were used to it. Changing tools midstream during the Battle of Stalingrad would have seemed like madness. Thus, the genius pistol, ahead of its time, became a hostage of time, the most inopportune, most terrible time in the nation's history. The legacy, the ghost that haunted design bureaus. After the war, the Voevodin was remembered. When a new army pistol competition began in the late 40s, ultimately won by the PM, the Makarov pistol, specialists from research institutes revisited the old designs, and they were astonished. Many of Voevodin's solutions were recognized as prophetic. A longer barrel and sight radius for better accuracy? Voevodin had it. A comfortable angled grip? He had it. Soft recoil for controlled shooting? He had it. The very idea of a powerful pistol with a large magazine for special roles? That was the core of his project. In essence, Pavel Voevodin, a decade before the Makarov and 15 years before the adoption of the Stechkin automatic pistol APS, had created precisely what would later be called an assault pistol. His brainchild was the direct conceptual ancestor of the APS, the proto-Stechkin. But the moment was lost forever. Post-war doctrine settled on a new, less powerful 9x18mm cartridge and a compact self-defense pistol, the PM. The idea of an enhanced officer's pistol was only realized in the niche APS, which never became standard issue. So what killed the Voevodin pistol? A fatal confluence of circumstances. Historical timing. It appeared 6 months before a cataclysmic war, when any disruption to production was mortally dangerous. Economic reality. Its perfection was too costly for the mass army of a nation fighting for its survival. System inertia. It was simpler and safer to produce the proven than to implement the revolutionary. This is not just a story about a weapon. It is a story about any breakthrough technology that appears at the wrong time. About geniuses whose ideas outpace their era and are shattered against the cliffs of immediate necessity. About how the wheel of history sometimes rolls over a future that could have been better. Friends, that brings us to the end of this long, sad, and captivating story. I truly believe such tales need to be told. They teach us to see history not as a dry sequence of dates, but as a battlefield of ideas, where the winner is not always the best, but often the most convenient and timely. What do you think? Did the Voevodin have a chance if the war had started a year later? Should the country have taken the risk and started its production at the expense of the TT? Or was the decision the only right one? Write your opinion in the comments. Let's discuss. And if this story gripped you as it did me, if you want me to keep digging into such alternative histories of technology and warfare, subscribe to the channel, like this video, text, and hit the notification bell. There are dozens of such forgotten, incredibly interesting tales in our history, and I will definitely tell you about them. Thank you for staying with me until the end.